What's going on, everybody? It's Oskino Ladon here, and I have special content to bring to y'all. I'm going to read an entire book, and this book is The Secret Lost Diary of Admiral Richard E. Byrd in the Phantom of the Poles, a secret expedition and a journey to a paradise inside the earth. Chapter 1: A Strange Land. In the year 1947, Admiral Richard E. Byrd made a flight into the South Polar region of the world. Before he started on the venture, Byrd made a mysterious statement, quote, "I'd like to see that land beyond the pole, the area beyond the pole in the center of the great unknown," end quote. In the cockpit of his plane was a powerful two-way radio. When Byrd and his scientific companions took off from their base at the South Pole, they managed to fly 1,700 miles beyond it. That's when the radio in Byrd's plane was put into use to report something utterly incredible. There was a strange great valley below them. For some unknown reason, the valley Byrd saw was not ice-covered, as it should have been in the frigid Antarctic. It was green and luxuriant. There were mountains with thick forests of trees on them. There was lush grass and underbrush. Most amazing, a huge animal was observed moving through the underbrush. In a land of ice, snow, and almost perpetual deep freeze, here was a stupendous mystery. Byrd had discovered a strange great valley just beyond the South Pole, where the weather temperature, believe it or not, was evidently something like 75 degrees. Suddenly, the press and radio were hushed up. After the first brief messages leaked through to newspapers, no further confirmation of the big discovery was given. Was it merely a hoax? Some newsman joke? I think not. I believe that Byrd came upon the location of a great doorway or entrance leading deep into the unknown interior of the earth. The Great Door at the South Pole region. Having found that, I believe he guessed no longer. He then knew, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that this secret door must open into the cavern world. He would go there and find out, see for himself, the wonder and everlasting mystery of the unknown inner earth. On April 5th, 1955, Admiral Richard E. Byrd was commissioned by the U.S. Navy to explore the South Pole. 1 year later, from the South Pole base, the U.S. Navy flew beyond the pole to a distance of 2,300 miles. In this dramatic exploratory flight, I believe the secret Great Door was seen. Why I believe that? Because Byrd's report on March 13th, when he returned from the South Pole, was, quote, "The present expedition has opened up a vast new land," end quote. But you and I were never told exactly what Byrd and his men discovered. Why not? Was there a very good reason not to talk about it? Frank Edwards, a serious UFO researcher, author, and deep student of the spacecraft phenomenon, wrote an article in July 1955 issue of Fate magazine, quote, "In Admiral Richard Byrd's report of his first trip to the Antarctic, his group discovered two large blue-green lakes of warm water in the very midst of that desolate expanse of eternal ice. There was no trace of any volcanic heat supply. In fact, there was no visible means which could explain the incongruous existence of warm water lakes in the ice cap of the Antarctic. Admiral Byrd made note of still another strange aspect of the lakes. Alongside one of them, he wrote that there were long, straight, black lines which resembled blast marks. End quote. Blast marks? Could some nation on Earth be using the South Pole as a launching place for satellites or missiles? Doubtful. More likely, the inner Earth people are involved. Richard Byrd reported the discovery of a large, warm water sea near the South Pole and stretching beyond it. The year was 1955. I think he also found something else, something he could not speak about for special reasons. I think he found a mighty canyon bordering that warm sea, a canyon sloping gradually into the interior of the Earth, into the great unknown country of the inner Earth. The Antarctic continent is big, terribly big. It is possibly considerably larger than the former estimate of some 6 million square miles of ice and snow. Results of the 1958 International Geophysical Year of exploration indicate that the Earth is covered with 40% more ice than we'd previously estimated. Also, that Antarctica may be divided. Now we have something. Science Newsletter for January 17, 1959, carried the startling piece of information. Quote, several discoveries increase the possibility that Antarctica may be divided in two. These include discovery of a sub-sea level trough trending inland from Ellsworth Station, another trough on the other side of the continent trending inland from the Ross Sea in a deep basin in Marie Byrd Land. End quote. If Antarctica is divided, what does that mean? That there is another portion of that continent that nobody is telling us about? Does it mean there is another continent entirely? A new land area in some unexplored sea? Possibly. If so, important information obviously has been withheld from the public. New curiously strange that on February 16, 1950, 4 long years after Byrd's trip to the South Pole, this article was released to the newspapers. Unexplored sea entered by U.S. Navy. Aboard the USS Glacier off Antarctica, February 16th, 2 U.S. Navy icebreakers today penetrated the Bellingshausen Sea for the first time in history and moved toward a stretch of eastern Antarctica never before seen by man. Never before seen by man? I wonder, to stir up matters a little more and educate us, the general public, gradually to the whole fantastic idea of an inner Earth and saucers that come from there. Here's another clipping that is loaded with dynamite. It appeared on the very same day that the Unexplored Sea bit was released. Sky mystery over Alaska confirmed. Colorado Springs, February 16th. A spokesman for the North American Air Defense Command here confirmed today that unidentified flying objects were observed in the skies over Alaska yesterday on 2/16/1960. Quote, the spokesman said at 3 a.m. yesterday the Combat Operations Center of NORAD at ENT Air Force Base here received a report from Northerly Observation Post that 2 objects were moving in opposite directions across Alaska. Quote, one of the objects was reported in the vicinity of Nome. It appeared to be moving slowly in a northeasterly direction. The object disappeared without a trace and without giving any indication of its size. Saucers over Alaska? Significant? Very. Both Alaska and Canada have had much more than their share of sightings in recent months. Why? Is there some connection with the land beyond the pole? That unknown country, which we suspect is nothing less than the inner Earth itself. Indeed, there is a connection. If the saucers enter and leave the inner Earth by way of the polar entrances, quite naturally they be seen by Alaskans and Canadians much more frequently than they would by people in other parts of the world. Alaska is close to the North Pole. So is Canada. Every riddle has its answer. When Admiral Byrd went into the unknown country, into the center of the great unknown, where was he? If Marshall Gardner were here now, I'm sure he'd agree with us when we gently suggest that Byrd was at the very doorway of inner Earth. In the South Pole area, it lies beyond the pole. But where? In the South Pole area, it may be found, I feel reasonably certain, in eastern Antarctica, that fabulous region never before seen by man. I used to scoff at legends. I don't anymore. Behind every legend, strange to say, can be found a kernel of truth, a group of facts around which the legend was built. The first credible UFO sighting ever made in 20th century Antarctica is credited to Chile's naval officer, Commander Augusto Orrego. On March 12, 1950, Commander Orrego and his men had spotted a fleet of round aerial machines circling their Antarctic base. A portion of the Chilean officer's report told this amazing story. Quote, during the bright Antarctic night, we say flying saucers, one above the other, turning at tremendous speeds. We have photographs to prove what we saw. End quote. So what can we say about Admiral Byrd's supposedly suppressed diary in his flight into inner Earth? Did it really happen, or is it someone's attempt to draw attention away from some other earth-shattering adventure? Let us go deeper, dear friend, into the unexplored, until we, like Admiral Byrd, will have stepped into the center of the great unknown, beyond the beyond. Chapter 2. Myths and Legends of the Hollow Earth. As theories go, the idea that the Earth is hollow does not garner a lot of respect. For most people, the hollow Earth is probably a close second to the Earth is flat theory on that big list of crackpot ideas. Nevertheless, as long as there have been people able to sit around a campfire, tales of a mysterious inner world have been part of mankind's heritage. Unlike the flat Earth, the hollow Earth has not disappeared into that great dustbin of quaint and old-fashioned myths of our ancestors. No longer does anyone have stories to tell of angels taking them up on high to view the flat Earth, but even into this modern age of spaceflight and personal computers, there are still claims of personal encounters with the lands and people of the inner world. Geologists say that the Earth at its very center is composed of extremely dense, extremely hot, crystallized iron and nickel. Hardly the type of conditions that would be hospitable to any sort of living creature. However, there are those who say that the Earth is hollow, and inside this subterranean realm there exists a world almost beyond belief. A world that is home to a rich diversity of life, and as some say, civilizations of superior beings who are the true masters of this planet. Scientists say that it is impossible for any life to exist deep underground, that the Earth is solid through and through. However, at this point in time, no scientist has actually ever been far enough underground to prove their theories. On the other hand, there have been plenty of people throughout the centuries who have claimed to have journeyed to the underground world, seen the sights, met the people, and returned to tell their tales. The idea of the hollow earth is still so tantalizing that Dr. Brooks Agnew, a physicist and engineer, has been planning an expedition to the inner earth in an attempt to find the northern polar opening. Dr. Agnew hopes to board the commercially owned Russian icebreaker Yamal in the port of Murmansk and to sail into the polar sea just beyond Canada's Arctic islands. Everest has been climbed 100 times, Mr. Agnew says. The Titanic has been scanned from stem to stern. But this is the first and only expedition to the North Pole opening ever attempted. Dr. Agnew is the latest in a long line of people to suggest the theory that humans live on the surface of a hollow planet in which two undiscovered openings near the North and South Poles connect the outer Earth with an interior realm. In the 17th century, English astronomer and mathematician Sir Edmund Halley, who calculated the orbit of Halley's Comet, advanced hollow Earth theories, as did German scientist Athanasius Kircher. A sense of adventure. What is it about the hollow Earth theory that continues to fascinate people? Perhaps it is because people love a good mystery, and right now there are not a lot of good mysteries left for people to cling to. The surface of the planet has been almost completely explored, and now we are taking those first steps to penetrate the vast reaches of outer space. So what does that leave for the rest of us who have that primal urge to see what lies on the other side of the mountain? The deepest parts of the ocean are still almost completely untouched by human exploration, but it is not so easy for most of us to do that sort of exploring. You either have to have a whole lot of money or the ability to hold your breath for a really long time to do any serious undersea exploration. Part of the hollow earth mystique is that many ancient civilizations have similar creation legends that involve mankind birthing from subterranean realm. Some of these myths even seem to suggest that people first came to the surface world via a great opening located somewhere in the northern polar regions. The Inuit people have legends that tell of a beautiful land far to the north, a land of perpetual light where there is no darkness or a bright sun. This wonderful land has a mild climate where large lakes never freeze, where tropical animals roam in herds, and where birds of many colors cloud the sky, a land of perpetual youth where people live for thousands of years in peace and happiness. They believe that after death, the soul descends beneath the earth, first to an abode rather like purgatory, but good souls then descend further to a place of perfect bliss where the sun never sets. A Welshman, Walter Mapes, in the latter part of the 12th century, in his collection of anecdotes, tells of a prehistoric king of Brighton called Herla, who met with the Skraelings or Inuits who took him beneath the earth. Many early legends tell of people going under the earth into a strange realm, staying there for a long period of time, and later returning. The ancient Irish had a legend of a land far to the north where the sun always shone and it was always summer weather. They even thought that some of their heroes had gone there and returned, after which they were never satisfied with their own country. The Japanese paradise was situated on top of the globe and at the same time at the center of the earth. It was called the Island of the Congealed Drop. Its first roof pillar was the earth's axis, and over it was the pivot of the vault of heaven. As well, The Chinese terrestrial paradise, round in form, is described not only as the center of the earth, but also as directly under Shang-Ti's heavenly palace, which is declared to be in the pole star and is sometimes called the Palace of the Center. Cave explorer taken to inner world. In 1954, spelunker George Weist, along with his friends, was exploring a branch of caverns connected to the Mammoth Cave system in Kentucky. Unexpectedly, Weist lost his footing and fell into the gap between the wall of the cave and the floor. Unable to locate their friend, the rest of the party returned to the surface to get help, but George was never found and he was given up for dead. Several weeks later, Weist reappeared near his home in Glasgow, Kentucky, looking no worse for his accident and with a bizarre story of his missing time. He told his friends that after slipping through the crack, he tumbled down into a deep pit where he found himself in total darkness with his leg trapped between rocks. He tried yelling to attract attention, but it soon became clear that he was lost with no hope for rescue. Weist had no idea how long he had been trapped in the suffocating darkness. With no outside references, time had lost all meaning. Just when he had almost given up hope, he felt an odd vibration in the floor. He soon began to hear a sound like machinery somewhere in the darkness. As the sound grew louder, Weist began calling out, thinking that a search party had found him. Eventually, he saw a dim glow that he realized came from lights being carried by a small group of people that immediately set to work freeing him from his predicament. Due to his injuries and exhaustion, Weist could not recall much after that point. He remembered waking up on a small bed in what appeared to be a sparsely furnished medical clinic. The door soon opened, and a young woman dressed in a light blue-colored pantsuit came into the room carrying his cleaned and pressed clothes. The woman was tall, with blonde hair and eyes, the brightest color of blue that Weist had ever seen. The man realized that he was completely naked and quickly dressed, noting that the leg that had been trapped in the rocks now seemed completely uninjured and free of pain. All the while, the woman stood by watching. Weist tried asking her where he was and how long he had been there, but the woman remained annoyingly silent. When he was finished dressing, the woman motioned him to follow her, and the two left the room. Stepping outside, Weist was stunned to see a landscape that was totally unfamiliar to him. It appeared that they were on a flower-covered plain with snow-capped mountains off in the distance. "The beauty took my breath away," he said. "The sky was cloudless and blue, but the sun looked odd," Weist recalled. "It seemed smaller, dimmer, and had a slight reddish or copper color to it. I could look directly at it and it didn't hurt my eyes," he said. But the sight that shook the man to his very core was the realization that he could see no horizon. "Behind me were high mountains," Weist said, "but in front of me was flat land that stretched away into the distance. Instead of a horizon, it looked like I was at the bottom of a huge bowl with the sides going up in every direction that finally disappeared into the sky." Before Weist had a chance to contemplate his surroundings for very long, he was approached by a group of men who silently motioned for him to follow. Like the woman, the men were all similar in appearance, tall, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and hands with unusually long fingers. Again, Weist tried asking where he was, but his host remained strangely silent. He was taken to an area where parked on the ground were several metallic, football-shaped objects. One of the craft had an open door with an extended ramp that he was quickly led into. Once inside, one of the tall men walked up to Weiss and smiled broadly at him, the first real expression that any of them had exhibited, and placed his hands on either side of Weiss's head. That is the last thing he remembered until waking up just outside of town. George Weiss had no explanation on what had happened to him until several years later when he ran across an article in Ray Palmer's Flying Saucer magazine. The article dealt with the hollow earth theory, and from its description, Weiss felt that his strange experience was somehow connected to the inner world. Subterranean flying saucers. Ray Palmer, who was a writer and editor of such magazines as Amazing Stories, Fate, Search, Flying Saucers, was often referred to as the man who created flying saucers. With his background in science fiction, Palmer was one of the earliest publishers to realize that there was money to be made on the subject of UFOs. Palmer would never commit himself to the extraterrestrial explanation for UFOs that had become so predominant by the 1950s. Instead of looking to the heavens for flying saucers, Palmer looked downwards into the hollow earth as a possible point of origin. In the December 1959 issue of Flying Saucers magazine, Palmer wrote, "Flying Saucers magazine has amassed a large file of evidence which its editors consider unassailable to prove that the flying saucers are native to the planet Earth and originate from the hollow interior by way of openings in the North and South poles." Theodore Fitch was another writer who agreed with Palmer's thesis. In his book, Our Paradise Inside the Earth, Fitch writes, "UFO occupants who come to us in flying saucers and who pose to be visitors from other planets are really members of an advanced civilization in the hollow interior of the Earth, who have important reasons for keeping their true place of origin secret, for which reason they purposely foster the false belief that they come from other planets. Those who embrace the extraterrestrial hypothesis of UFOs find it easy to scoff at the idea that UFOs and their occupants could originate from a yet-to-be-explored realm beneath our feet. Considering the ancient worldwide traditions that say the inner world exists and is populated by a rich variety of intelligent races, it is no more difficult to imagine that some UFOs could be from right here on planet Earth than it is to imagine them traveling thousands of light years from some far distant planet. So the next time someone says to keep your eyes to the skies, perhaps you should spend also little time looking downwards, for as above, so below." Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys noticed and seen this picture before, but this has like a lot of graphs to it. So I'm just going to keep it up here because I cannot break down this map here, but I am very interested in knowing what you guys think about this. I mean, you know, you got the scale in miles below, and up top you see the Andes Mountain, Mount Everest, you know, spaceship, get the Giza Pyramid, Empire State Building. They're just showing you like the references for height of certain structures and mountain masses. And then obviously you have the Agartha Land of Races dead center in this graph. You have the Land of Advanced Races, the Central Sun, the city of Shambhala, Cave City of Semi-Advanced Race, mountains higher than on outside. You have the man-made tunnels. This is a pretty extensive graph. I've seen just the inner picture where it just shows Agartha, but not the other information that kind of can give you a guide as to how to break this down. Very interesting, to say the least. What do y'all think? Now, this is a picture that was taken in 1947 of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. He is smoking some tobacco in a pipe that he left around for 12 years. And this photo was taken during Operation High Jump. Now, you guys know what Operation High Jump is, right? If not, I will explain it to you. Now we get into the secret lost diary of Admiral Richard E. Byrd. His words, word for word, everything that he wrote down in his diary. Let's get right into it. The exploration flight over the North Pole. I must write this diary in secrecy, in obscurity. It concerns my Arctic flight of the 19th day of February in the year of 1947. There comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance and one must accept the inevitability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation at this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do my duty and record here for all to read one day. In a world of greed and exploitation of certain of mankind can no longer suppress that which is the truth. Flight log, Base Camp Arctic, February 19th, 1947. 0600 hours. All preparations are complete for our flight northward, and we are airborne with full fuel tanks at 0610 hours. 0620 hours. Fuel mixture on starboard engine seems too rich. Adjustment made and Pratt Whitneys are running smooth. 0730 hours. Radio check with base camp. All is well and radio reception is normal. 0740 hours. No slight oil leak in starboard engine. Oil pressure indication seems normal. 0800 hours. Slight turbulence noted from easterly direction at altitude of 23-21 feet. Correction to 1700 feet. No further turbulence, but tailwind increases. Slight adjustment in throttle controls. Aircraft performing very well. 0815 hours. Radio check with base camp. Situation normal. 0830 hours. Turbulence encountered again. Increased altitude to 2900 feet. Smooth flight conditions again. 0910 hours. Vast ice and snow below. Note coloration of yellowish nature and disperse in a linear pattern. Altering course for better examination of this color pattern. Below, note reddish or purple color also. Circle this area 2 full turns and return to assigned compass heading. Position check made again to base camp and relay information concerning colorations in the ice and snow below. 0910 hours. Both magnetic and gyro compasses beginning to gyrate and wobble. We are unable to hold our heading by instrumentation. Take bearing with sun compass, yet all seems well. The controls are seemingly slow to respond and have sluggish quality, but there is no indication of icing. 0915 hours. In the distance is what appears to be mountains. 0949 hours. 29 minutes elapsed flight time from the first sighting of the mountains. It is no illusion. They are mountains, and consisting of a small range that I have never seen. 0955 hours. Altitude changed to 2950 feet. Encountering strong turbulence. 1000 hours. We are crossing over the small mountain range and still proceeding northward as best as can be ascertained. Beyond the mountain range is what appears to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion. There should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal. Should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back. 1005 hours. I alter altitude to 1400 feet and execute a sharp left turn to better examine the valley below. It is green with either moss or a type of tight-knit grass. The light here seems different. I cannot see the sun anymore. We make another left turn and we spot what seems to be a large animal of some kind below. It appears to be an elephant. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible. Yet, there it is. Increase altitude to 1,000 feet and take binoculars to better examine the animal. It is confirmed. It is definitely a mammoth-like animal. Report this to base 1030 hours. Encountering more rolling green hills now. The external temperature indicator reads 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Continuing on our heading now. Navigation instruments seem normal now. I am puzzled over their actions. Attempt to contact base camp. Radio is not functioning. 1130 hours. Countryside below is more level and normal, if I may use that word. Ahead, we spot what seems to be a city. This is impossible. Aircraft seems light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. My God. Off our port and starboard wings are a strange type of aircraft. They are closing rapidly along. They are disc-shaped and have a radiant quality to them. They are close enough now to see the markings on them. It is a type of swastika. This is fantastic. Where are we? What has happened? I tug at the controls again. They will not respond. We are caught in an invisible vice grip of some 1135 hours. Our radio crackles and a voice comes through in English with what perhaps is a slight Nordic or Germanic accent. The message is, "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral. You are in good hands." I note the engines of our plane have stopped running. The aircraft is under some strange control and is now turning itself. The controls are 140 hours. Another radio message received. We begin the landing process now, and in moments the plane shudders slightly and begins a descent as though caught in some great unseen elevator. The downward motion is negligible, and we touch down with only a slight 1145 hours. I am making a hasty last entry in the flight log. Several men are approaching on foot toward our aircraft. They are tall with blonde hair. In the distance is a large shimmering city pulsating with rainbow hues of color. I do not know what is going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons on those approaching. I hear now a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. That is the end of his direct log.